Hello everyone, this is Jen and I make useful English Lit study videos on Shakespeare, poetry, fiction, literary ideas and more to help you become a literary expert. So if that sounds like what you want, then make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you never miss out on my future weekly videos. Now, if you're studying literature, you'll probably have come across terms like tone, mood, and atmosphere, which are three of the most commonly discussed and examined concepts in English literature studies. They are also some of the most confusing concepts for quite a lot of GCSE level and even A-level students who either struggle to identify or explain what a tone or mood or atmosphere is, or else they don't understand the difference between these concepts altogether. So if you belong to the latter group, then that's easy because you can just watch my video right here where I explain exactly what the difference is with some examples. So I made that video a while ago, but over the years I've noticed that many students continue to find it a challenge to describe and explain the tone, mood, or atmosphere of a literary passage. So I've mentioned this before, but the basis of tone, mood, and atmosphere is actually our emotion. They are about how someone, be it an author, a character, or a reader, feels about something, be it an idea, situation, person, or environment. So for instance, when Scrooge from Charles Dickens' The Christmas Carol says that the poor had better die and decrease the surplus population, his tone is cruel and contemptuous because Scrooge feels that poor people are a nuisance to society with their constant need for alms. Or when John Steinbeck sets the scene of the Salinas Valley at the start of his novel Of Mice and Men, the description of the landscape creates a tranquil but also slightly unsettling mood because the atmosphere is both deadly quiet yet pulsing with hints of life, as with the evening of a hot day started the little wind to moving among the leaves, the shades the rabbits sat as quietly as little grey sculptured stones. The rabbits hurried noiselessly for cover, for a moment the place was lifeless and then two men emerged, etc. So when we read this passage, we might feel a sense of calm, but equally we're curious about why there's such eerie calm in a place when there are also so many animals and humans. Of course, this is all easy to come up with for someone like me who's taught these concepts for a while now, but how do we help students like yourself also accurately describe and explain them when analysing a literary text? So an idea came to me the other day while I was playing around with some AI voice generator tools, and that is tone, mood, and atmosphere are essentially first experienced through our hearing, sight, and sensations. Verbal expressions is simply the mediated form of these three experiences. So if tone is best gauged from hearing how someone speaks, and mood or atmosphere is best intuited from seeing and sensing an environment, then instead of banging our heads against the wall of coming up with the right word to describe tone, mood, and atmosphere, perhaps we could explore an alternative and hopefully more effective way of engaging with these ideas by hearing, seeing, and feeling our literary passages, and to make concepts like tone, mood, and atmosphere more vivid for our understanding with the help of some creative AI tools like voice generators and image or video generators. So in the rest of this video, I'm going to illustrate exactly how we can use AI tools to enhance our ability to identify and explain tone, mood, and atmosphere. This is going to be a fun one, so let's dive straight into it. Now, one possible reason why tone is quite confusing is that it encompasses almost everything: word choice, syntax, context, and in the case of spoken language, volume, intensity, and pitch, hence the word intonation, which refers to the rise and fall of speech. Trying to infer a character or a passage's tone from all of these elements all at once can be overwhelming, so I figured that we could start by hearing what a description or dialogue sounds like, which we can now do with AI voice generators that come with a wide range of tones, accents, registers, and pitches. Now, in my previous video on using voice generators for a better understanding of poetic meter and rhythm, I used ElevenLabs' text-to-voice generator platform, which at the time of my filming this video is one of the best, most human-like voice generators out there. The great thing about it is that I can copy and paste a short passage or dialogue from any novel and then pick from a range of voices designated with specific tonal tags like authoritative, strong, pleasant, emotional, intense, etc. They even have quirky, playful tones like sailor, witch, and seductive, which are probably quite fun even just to listen to and play around with. For example, I'll give the voice generator the exchange between Victor Frankenstein and the monster he's created when they encounter each other on the Alps in chapter 10 in the novel, and see how that sounds.
Do you dare approach me? And do not you fear the fierce vengeance of my arm wreaked on your miserable head. Begone, vile insect, or rather stay, that I may trample you to dust. And oh, that I could, with the extinction of your miserable existence, restore those victims whom you have so diabolically murdered. I expected this reception, said the demon.
So that's read by Alice, according to the ElevenLabs platform, who was supposed to have a confident British broadcaster's voice. And you notice that she reads with appropriate intonation and inflections to make us feel the difference between Frankenstein's resentful anguish and the monster's solemn indignation, right? So let's try another voice, right? Say, for example, Adam's deep American narrative voice and see if it sounds differently and what we might be able to glean from hearing this version instead.
Do you dare approach me? And do not you fear the fierce vengeance of my arm wreaked on your miserable head? Begone, vile insect. Or rather stay, that I may trample you to dust. And oh, that I could, with the extinction of your miserable existence, restore those victims whom you have so diabolically murdered. I expected this reception, said the demon.
Now, one thing to play with is the style exaggeration meter on this platform, as you see, which increases how dramatic the voice sounds, dramatic in the theatrical sense, which could be especially helpful in cases like drama or Shakespeare's passages. In any case, just browsing through the voice library, looking at the words and tags for specific tones, and exploring what different tones sound like can be really useful to get a clearer picture of how a specific tone might sound like to you. How might an authoritative versus an intense tone differ, and how so in the context of a description that you're reading or studying? So I'd encourage you to just play around with voice generator tools like this. And you don't have to use a platform like ElevenLabs. There are other human-like AI voice generators out there, and with the speed of development in AI, there's bound to be more and better models. And by the time you watch this video, there's probably plenty more already. But personally, I found using text-to-voice tools to be a really helpful way for students to get a more concrete idea of what a tone sounds like. And upon hearing it, consider how they might be able to describe it better with words. Now, when it comes to mood and atmosphere, it's probably just as important that students experience it firsthand, what that feels like in a real setting. This reminds me of something I used to wonder about when studying things like romantic and pastoral poetry back in university. I noticed that some of my peers who grew up in places like rural Somerset or Verdon Salisbury often just seemed to get the nature stuff that poets like Thomas Hardy and John Keats wrote about. Whereas I, as an urban jungle native who grew up among skyscrapers and never really saw much of even a meadow or field in my childhood, would always kind of struggle to visualize a specific scene described in these richly descriptive nature and landscape poems and novels. So I was lucky though in that I'm naturally more sensitive to words and language. So eventually Hardy and Keats' vivid imagery resonated with me, or at least resonated with me enough for me to do well at university. But I do think though that there is a significant difference in being able to see a moment described in words in our minds. So the best thing, of course, is to go out there into the wild and greenery and sit for an afternoon to take in the real environment with all its multidimensional and multimodal sensory tapestry. But a quicker alternative is to generate an image or even a video of a specific moment that's described in a literary passage or a poem. There's plenty of powerful image generators out there, from OpenAI's DALL-E, or now its 4.0 model, and at the time of my filming, they've just released a new, more accurate image generator model under the family of 4.0 to Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, many others. Then when it comes to video generators, the best in-class one right now is OpenAI's Sora model. But let's take a look at the image generation approach. Say, I take the first stanza from Keats' To Autumn poem, and I ask the AI to generate an image that reflects the mood of this description and see what it comes up with. I've used both OpenAI's model and Midjourney to generate images inspired by Keats' description, and what's really fascinating to me is that the mood interpreted by these respective models is really quite different. I personally prefer Midjourney's version, and actually I prefer Midjourney in general because I find it to be more nuanced, realistic, and refined in capturing the vibe of the original poem. And you'll notice that DALL-E's image conveys a much happier, playful mood with an emphasis on the phrase, swell the gourd, with the plethora of plump pumpkins on the ground, right? And the almost kind of like cartoon-like magical quality of the cottage house. Although, if you have access to the paid version of GPT-4o, which is called Plus or Pro, you'll see that its image generation quality is much, much higher than its previous version, its DALL-E version, with the setting here being portrayed with much more varied, nuanced shades of autumn color and a much less cartoony and much more realistic vibe. Equally, it's worth considering what these images don't quite capture from Keats' description in the poem. For example, the personification of the bees who think warm days will never cease, which should be a key focus in our analysis of this stanza as the perspective shifts from the zoomed out landscape of the lush autumnal setting to the zoomed in focus of the hardworking bees, right, whose labor is what creates the verdant growth and vibrancy of autumn's harvest. So here's another very different kind of mood for us to consider now using Thomas Hardy's poem, Neutral Tones. Let's take a look at this. So pretty grim grey vibes, as you can see, and right away what strikes me about these images is just how melancholy and depressing I feel just by looking at them, right? But the key here is for us to consider the poem's message in relation to this suggested scene, and consider how our visualization of this landscape reinforces our ability to describe the atmosphere of Hardy's poem. Now, I'm inspired by the fourth image of the Midjourney generator cluster, where the blurry reflection of the trees on the calm lake might suggest the speaker's desire to blot out the painful memory of a past love, but the traces of his longing remain on his mental canvas, perhaps here symbolized by the surface of the lake. The absence of people or animals in these images also highlights the sense of isolation and loneliness felt by the lovelorn speaker. So now let's change tact and try video generation, which is going to require that you subscribe to the paid version of OpenAI's GPT platform, at least at the time of me filming this. So perhaps that's something you might want to ask your parents to consider if you're a student watching this. Anyway, I'm now going to use Sora, OpenAI's video generator, just to create a video based entirely on Keats' To Autumn and Hardy's Neutral Tones. And I'm going to paste each stanza of the respective poems into the storyboard of the Sora video generator as you see here. And let's see what it creates. So it's really interesting that the main character here is a young woman looking pensively into the distance in a setting that seems like a vineyard, which perhaps captures the lines where the speaker says, "Thee sitting careless on a grain of roof floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind." But this detail isn't reflected in the images, you notice, and likewise the situation with the video of Hardy's Neutral Tones. Now, where the scene cuts from a wide shot of a man looking out at a grey pond to the close-up of a woman, or two, weird, perhaps signaling the sharp, almost intrusive memory of this past love in the man's mind, specifically of the smile on your mouth, which was the deadest thing in that line from the poem. Of course, there's the anachronism of the characters in Sora's video looking much, much too 21st century and modern to be appropriate for Hardy's Victorian setting, but it's still an intriguing way of engaging with the poem and having the text impressed upon our minds in this vivid visual way. So while AI image and video generators are by no means going to recreate precisely what's going on in a poem or a passage, what's great is that it can often capture a specific mood and atmosphere, presenting it in a concrete, impressionable form for us to associate with what's otherwise just a bunch of words. So I'd recommend that you really actually try this method out with any of the poems you're studying or any descriptive passage from a prose piece, or even just any descriptive prose passage you're reading, and see how it works out for you in terms of inspiring some ideas for how you might want to describe the mood or atmosphere of the text. And there you go, guys. That's how I think you can use multimodal AI tools today to enhance and expand your understanding of tone, mood, and atmosphere, and to engage with these tricky concepts beyond the level of language by experiencing them through voice and visual imagery. I genuinely think that this is going to strengthen the effectiveness of your literary learning, so let me know how it goes for you. I'd love to hear your feedback on how you find the experience of using these AI tools for poetry and literary learning. So for more AI for learning videos, check out my playlist right here. And if you're interested in learning more about how you can use AI to level up your studies, then don't forget to sign up for early access to my AI for Learning course below, and I'll reach out with more details very soon. As always, if you found this video helpful in any way, hit the thumbs up button below so that you can encourage me to keep making these useful English Lit study videos for you. And if you haven't already subscribed, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and click that subscribe button below and switch on that bell notification so you never miss out on my future weekly videos. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.